How's it going, everybody? Raising Hell here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a turn-based sort of tactics strategy game called War Banners. Now, this game, I imagine, was developed by a Russian developer because it started out in Russian as a language, but it was very easy and quite obvious to be able to change it to other localized languages. Now, I can only speak for the English localization of the game, but from what I've seen so far of it, I would say it's a pretty accurate translation of whatever the text, the source text was. There are many times when I've seen games poorly translated into other languages, but I'm happy to report that War Banners seems to do a very good job of, whoever their English translator was, seems to have done a very good job. So what is this game sort of about? It's kind of an old school game. It's kind of a throwback to more turn-based strategy games of old, especially ones that focus on a story. So like RPG kind of strategy games. What we're going to do here, though, is just jump in, load a game. I've been saving games for some time now. Most of these describe what I was in the process of doing when I saved it. Now, since the game is, it has autosaves, obviously, right there, but you can also do manual saves, like in older games, right? And I would actually recommend it because this is the type of party, not party as in fiesta, but party as in like a company of soldiers game. And if you make mistakes early on in the game, it helps to be able to go back to previous missions that you realized you messed up on, and to enable yourself to do better the next time, because the mistakes are sort of cumulative. So if you do badly in one of the earlier missions, you might realize later that a unit that got killed off really had a large impact on a later mission. So in our case, though, we're just going to load the latest one. Let's see here. It's been a while since I've actually played it. So I'm looking at the dates here. I think Second Siege is the most recent one. So in this case, I saved when I was at my company screen. I think it's called the Army Camp. But here is the map of the world. This is where the campaign takes place. And as you can see, my progress so far here, we can actually scroll around using the middle mouse button, which is a little bit odd. You gotta click down and hold your middle mouse button. I really don't see the reason why it couldn't have just been the left mouse button, like an average normal kind of person would do it. But okay, it works fairly well because you really don't have to scroll around it that much. Like, it's not a huge map. Each of these little red signets represents a point on our journey so far. So as you can see, we started out here on think of these mostly as battles. Most of them are battles that I fought. You can see I did a little bit of crisscrossing here. And one of the more interesting things about this campaign is it's much more rigid than you might expect. You're not going to be able to go and retreat to farm XP from a previous battle, right? And that's what makes it particularly difficult, I would say. But in our case, we have this as the next mission that I'm headed towards. It's called Dark Clouds. But before we get into it, we actually want to take a look at our army camp again, because that's where we control our party. Now, our party consists of the lead of it. We're a mercenary party, so that's what the story revolves around. In terms of the difficulty of this game, it's one of those games where you're sort of encouraged to play at your own difficulty. If you think you're really good at it, you can go ahead and increase the difficulty at any time. In my case, I started out on normal, but then I realized I made a whole bunch of mistakes that got units killed, and I realized I wouldn't be able to continue to progress without switching it down to easy. And granted, easy is as low as it goes, so if I continue to make mistakes from here on out, it's most likely I'll have to restart because I simply won't have the resources. Like, you fall back on your gold over time. And once you run out of gold, then you're really not going to be able to progress anymore. Yeah, so here's my party. Of course, they all gain experience, as you would probably expect in an RPG. Since this is a turn-based tactics kind of RPG, that's where you can expect that kind of progression to exist. So as you can see right here, this is my main character. His name is Roderick. He's the leader of these mercenaries, and as we progressed through the story, we acquired different mercenaries with differing abilities. Now, he obviously started out with a lot of swordsmen, because swordsmen are something that a mercenary easily comes by large, and some archers, like swordsmen and some archers. But then as we got through other missions, we acquired more specialized units. For example, here we have Delilah. She's sort of a mage. The priestess is, she heals a lot of units. Mages kind of deal with damage. And then, okay, we lost the peasant here. The peasants are, we didn't even start with the peasant. They're so low. So they're like cannon fodder, but I like them because they have the ability to do something really interesting. They can build bridges, well, not bridges. They can build obstacles on tiles. And we also have a dancer here, and I imagine as the game progresses, we're still going to be introduced to some more specialist units as well. So we have a couple of other tabs here, and these are quite important to your survival in the game. So in the terms of the assistance tab, these are passive sorts of assistance that will be applied to your party in the battle once you hire them. And once you hire them, you don't lose them, and their perks are added to the start of any battle that you engage in. So for example, I have acquired Sabina Dark here, and at the beginning of battle, all enemies are cursed for 3 turns. Now, being cursed is a spell, and it has a general debuff on enemy units. So as you can see, by acquiring these assistants, they can give you a very critical edge in the battle against your enemies. However, if you can't afford to hire any of these, it's most likely you'll be able to go over here to the mercenaries and potions shop and find a much cheaper potion that can do the same kind of job for you that one of the assistants would. Now, granted, the assistants do have some very specialized abilities that you wouldn't be able to acquire through a potion, but a lot of these potions could actually be supplanted with a good assistant, providing you had enough gold. And this is where, managing your gold comes into play in this game, and why it's so critical is because you're going to have to go here to the potion shop before you begin a battle and make sure you equip your units with potions that you think you're going to need going forward. Because believe me, this has been quite critical in turning the tides of battle against almost insurmountable odds. Now, of course, we can also hire units here. This is where if we went ahead and lost one of our swordsmen in the course of the story, we could buy another one instead of choosing to resurrect the one over here. For example, my peasant. We can tell my peasant is level, I'm not even sure at this point. He's not killed much, so he can't be very, very experienced. That could be an actual downside to, okay, yeah, that's how they show it. I'm sorry, I forgot. Right here is where they show the level of a unit. So this peasant is only level 1. I think at that point there's really no point in resurrecting them, since it costs almost as much, and there's a huge debuff associated with resurrected units. So we're just going to disband this unit, and then we're going to go over here to the mercenaries and potions shop, and we're going to go ahead and buy another peasant, or hire one, I should say. Now, it's important to point out that this isn't one of those mobile games that we're also familiar with, where gold is simply another word for real life currency that you can buy. There are absolutely zero microtransaction implementations in this game, so it is much more true to the inspiration for games like this than you might be concerned about. In terms of our other units here, before we go into battle, I probably want to promote these units up. As you can see, they have enough experience. This mage has enough experience for a level 2, and every time your units earn another level, they get another promotion. The attributes that you have to choose from here, there are always going to be 3 of them. They're always going to be randomly generated. So in our case, I think for her, probably morale would be the most important. For our priestess here, mana regeneration perhaps, but once again, morale is important. I think we'll go with mana regeneration, because she does need to cast her healing spells a fair bit, and if she can cast like one additional healing spell during the duration of the battle, that could actually, it could add up to something significant. Our dancer here specializes in sort of like double strikes, and one of the things that I've noticed that I miss most about her is stamina. Her stamina tends to deplete rather quickly because of how her special abilities work. But in our case, I don't think we're actually, like, we don't have the ability to do any of that. So instead, probably evasion at this point. That increases the invasion. I'm not sure. I didn't really like any of those options there. And then of course this swordsman also needs another promotion. So we're going to go with strength for that probably. It does help to actually promote your units for different skills. So that way, once they're in battle, you can strategically place them about the map. So here we have part of the story. You can read these each time you go to a new location, and it sort of explains what you've encountered and what's going on. So now, with a little bit of that introduction out of the way, here we are engaged in an actual battle. Now this one centers around the defense of this city right here. So as you can see, we came in to help the garrison that are stationed on these walls defend against an enemy attacker. In this case, we're in general fighting against a lot of goblins and orcs, I believe, around here. So the interesting thing about a lot of our units is they are tailored towards certain abilities, of course. And the enemy units are as well. So in our case, we probably want to find a good defensive position to take up here for our units. At the start of the battle, you get to actually choose where to place your units. I think we're not going to be able to move our units around at all. I don't see any empty squares here, so we're just going to start by pressing space. And we're going to start moving our units. I'm going to plan on taking a position on this wall over here. We, of course, want to move our archers onto that wall first, because no more than one unit can be on a tile, and units can't move through each other. So as you can see, if a unit is blocking the natural path of movement for other units, you're simply not going to be able to go anywhere. And that does make how you choose, where you place your units, it really does have a large impact on the game. In the terms of the blue units, they're essentially allies. The red units are enemies, and then the green units, of course, are the ones that are under your direct control. So the blue units, they will help us, but they're a little bit less predictable. We can't really order them to do stuff. They'll simply, act on their own accord, doing what they think is best. We can help them by healing them, though, and stuff like that. So let's end that turn. And as you can see, some of the enemies now are, those are actually friendlies there that used their potions. But that was a good example of a potion that was used. And I'm not even sure if we have any potions with us. I probably should have checked that before going into this battle, because those potions can be pretty important. As you can see, we got bombarded right there with a poison potion. It's pretty strong. I've been hit with those before, and it's caused me to lose games or missions. You can see the little ladders that they use to get up on top of these walls. So these walls can't be climbed unless the enemy units push their little ladders across the tiles over there to the wall itself. But in our case, if we take a look at this unit, you can see what debuffs they have. And, you can see all their details simply by right-clicking on the unit. So we could take a look at the mage, we could take a look at the swordsman, we could take a look at the archer here. And as you can see, the negative debuff that was hit with because of a potion is called poisoned. And this unit, because of that, receives -1 to strength, -1 to accuracy, and -1 to evasion. All three pretty important stats. And in addition to 1 damage at the beginning of the turn for the next 3 turns, so we're going to lose about 3 health because of this. Now, my archer here carries one of these as well, the exact same potion that was thrown against me. So if we get this guy within range, next turn we might be able to lob out one of these potions at our enemies. So in our case, I think we want to move the archer right up here. Seems to be a logical place. We're next to this swordsman, this allied swordsman, so maybe he can help defend off any attacks from goblins. Then we also want to move this archer as close to this part of the wall as possible as well. I think we want to have our healer up on top of this wall to help heal the archers and other units that are being assaulted as this battle continues. There is going to be a lot of simple, like, tactical decision making, as you would expect in any sort of tactics-based game, right? It's not a glorious kind of job a lot of the times, the decisions that you make. So here, let's talk a little bit about unit abilities. This peasant, I believe it's called a peasant, yes. As I pointed out before, they do have their own unique abilities, and this one allows you to construct a barricade on an empty hex. What we're going to do here, so we're going to move on to that tile. I could move him once before I was going to run out of enough action points to actually build something. So as you can see, indicated by these numbers on these tiles, like if I click on her, this healer, for example, green, if I move to this green tile, that means I can perform one of my actions, my unit's special actions here, and then move again. If I move to a tile that has an orange number on it, that means I can move there, then perform an action, but I won't be able to move again. And if I move on to a tile with a red number, that means I'll simply be able to move there and then perhaps move again, but you don't get to have any actions. It's pretty important because obviously if your unit misses a turn with an action, that's potentially a lost opportunity. So in our case, we moved our peasant here. Now we're going to use the construction action, and we're going to construct a barricade on one of these spaces in the hopes that this will help slow down enemies once they breach these gates right here, because right here is a high obstacle gate. It can be opened and closed by the allies by turning this winch right up here on top of the wall, but it also can be broken down and opened by enemy troops. So in our case, the peasant is really the only constructing unit that we have access to. So like if we had a couple of them on our side, we could actually construct little barriers here. And in addition to his ability to construct a barricade, he can also dig a moat. Well, it's not really a moat, but he turns a regular tile into a ford. That makes it harder for enemy units to attack you. You can create a little bit of a barrier between them and you to create some advantageous terrain to fight in. I'm not exactly sure I wanted her there. We'll wait and see. It's a little bit hard to say right now. And of course, here's my commander, the most important unit really. His greatest ability is his heroic cry, which really gives a lot of your other units morale. And morale is very important. As you can see here, it is indicated by the little blue flag. If your morale is high, your units get a buff. If your morale is too low, your units get a debuff. And if your morale drops really low, they'll actually run away from you, and you'll no longer be able to control them. Which means that of all, even death sometimes is not nearly as bad as units with low morale running away. So you can see the troll right here is a very strong unit, a very strong enemy unit, and it's being directed towards this gate to tear it down, to try to get inside. By the way, I should point out that all of these enemy units do have a negative debuff thanks to one of the assistants that I had purchased. The negative debuff, I think I've referenced it before, but it's called the Cursed, and it gives all of these units -1 to strength, accuracy, and evasion for 3 turns after we started. So that can give us some critical time in actually getting our units into position before we have to worry about actually really facing their full strength, right? So in our case, I wanted to get this archer over here, but I think we're just going to move one, so that way we'll be able to shoot at the same time. And one of the best units that you really want to shoot at are these other mages over there, these Goblimonts. These are like the goblin equivalent of my mages, but since he's not within range, he's hidden behind these trees here, so I can't get a line of sight shot at him. Instead, we're probably going to shoot at this guy over here. 80% odds, it's worth it, I think, to take that chance, just in the hopes that, we took a fair amount of his health out, and that will keep him from casting a lot of really damaging spells on us. You might have noticed that the troll had 100% odds. This is because they'll always have 100% chance of being hit, and that's partly to offset their ridiculously high stats in comparison to other units. So our archer over here can't actually do anything this turn, and that was because one of the mages, I think it was him, one of the enemy mages actually cast a spell or threw a potion at me. I really lost sight of what exactly it was that happened, because technically potions can be sort of the same, they can provide the same effects as spells. But in our case, it held my unit and it also slowed my unit, which gave me less action points and it actually made me incapable of moving. So not only can I not use any of my action points, I also can't move anywhere out of the way. So we've come around to our peasant again this turn, and I'm going to go ahead and use his dig ability to dig up this tile right here. As you can see, it converted it into water. In the Ford, units spend more action points to move into this hex, and if they're in the hex, they receive a -3 to accuracy, -3 to evasion, making them a lot easier to strike if they get stuck in there, if they don't have enough movement points to move through it in one turn. So as you can see, this allows you to sort of create some advantageous terrain that you can defend. So in other words, I could have units around here and wait until this guy broke in through the doors and then try to hold them off by defending, this tile right here. Of course, we have to wait for cooldown, so it will be another 5 and 6 turns respectively for construction and the dig ability before they're capable of being utilized another time. And that's the same with a lot of these other unit abilities. So if we take a look here at Heroic Cry for my hero, as you can see, we can only use it once every 5 or 6 turns. Let's see here. It has a cooldown of 5 turns. Okay, but one of the really important things that I think we need to get done here is we need more soldiers on top of these ramparts. So what I'm going to do is move... I think I'm going to move the mage. Let's see, what can she do? Honestly, I find the mage a better healer than anything else, which is a bit of a shame because that makes her one of the worst magic units that I have access to. So at this point, I think all I can really do with her this turn is try to shoot for one of these goblins, this net catcher in our case. Hit him for -3. And now we want to move some of our soldiers onto the walls here. We'd be able to move 2 of them up there. And the idea here is that those 2 will help defend against any ladders that are run up here on the top of the walls. We might gradually move these soldiers over to make room for Roderick as well. I think he'll be coming in here next turn. The healer, of course, we can use to cast some spells that, I think in our case, we're going to have her bless a whole bunch of units here. We can capture quite a few units like this. Let's see here. I can move the peasant a little bit closer. We're going to move the dancer here. I think that will cover a lot of them. The blast spell, is like a little bit of a buff to all of your units' stats there. Well, not all of their stats, but quite a few important ones. Then I think we'll call that a turn for this turn. All right, there was a catapult. And the important thing to note about that is whoever controls the catapult gets to fire it every turn, which means that if you control it, you get to fire at your enemies. If the enemy controls it, they get to fire at you. Now, once this area was taken over, there was a point in time, because I've played this mission before, that an enemy actually took control of the catapult, and this resulted in my units taking a lot of collateral damage from the catapult from a long distance every turn. And it was something that I kind of regretted. So in the future, in facing similar situations, I might choose to have a unit go over there and try to defend the catapult for as long as possible. We still don't have any units actually climbing up the ladders, but in our case, our archer here is looking a little bit perilous. So I think we're going to be moving him away from the wall directly. As you can see, our allies did a good job of killing the mage, the enemy mage there. And but this one's still alive, so we probably want to shoot at him instead. I decided not to use my poison because we don't really have any groupings of units here, of enemy units, and poisons are much more effective when you have actual enemy units in a group. For example, like if we wanted to poison a couple of units here, Maybe these two I could get in one hit. And let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to toss that poison stink bomb out there, and it will poison 2 of them. Now, unfortunately, I probably shouldn't have equipped the archer with that, because, you know, the archer has a ranged attack already. Probably for this mission should have equipped one of my swordsmen with that potion, because right now they're not really capable of doing anything, since they're just standing here on the wall, kind of waiting for some action. But as you can see, there was a ladder right there. If I wanted to, I could step down the ladder myself, but I don't see any reason to go down there because I'm at a defensive advantage here on top of the wall. If we take a look at the wall stats, any unit that's standing on this hex receives a +2 bonus to accuracy, +4 to evasion, and ranged units receive a +2 range. So I don't really want to leave the wall if I don't have to. In our case, though, we do want to rotate our unit to face the oncoming enemy, because there are bonuses and debuffs applied to your unit depending upon which angle the enemy attacks from. So as you can see, the direction your unit is facing is indicated by this little green line around it. And the same goes for enemy units. You can see there's a red line around them. That's the direction they're facing in, even if you can't tell visually. If you confront a unit head on, you're going to get much better odds than if, well, he's going to get much better odds than if you sneak around and attack him from behind. So we want to be facing our enemies head on, right? We also want Roderick here on top of the wall, and I'm going to be using his heroic spell to make sure everybody gets a little bit of extra morale here before we get started in earnest with this battle. And I think these other units are largely just going to be standing here in the back. These 3 units hopefully will be defending this area in case anybody breaks into those doors or comes down from this side, where you can see they've already taken over that section of the wall. But we will be trying to hold this area off with these 3 units here. In our case, I think we're just going to have them sort of team up right about there. Well, everybody facing the right direction, like that. And I think that's pretty much a turn. Now, I noticed there are some units here that have taken a bit of damage, though, and maybe it would actually be prudent to try to heal some of them. Although I'm not sure it really is justifiable yet, because there is a price associated with that. But yes, let's actually heal this archer here. There. Full strength again. All right, let's go to the next turn. Catapult. So first it played my ally's turn, now it's playing the enemy's turn. As you can see, that mage is causing me a lot of trouble with the poison cloud. It deals a lot of damage to a lot of my units, which is one of the reasons why I try to target them as quickly as possible. And as you can see, the troll now has taken a shot at the gate, and it's almost obliterated it. Like, the gate has 1 health left. So that's not going to last much longer, but let's see what we can do about getting rid of this mage here. 1 more lucky hit would be enough to kill him, and it did. Granted, there are chances to hit, so certainly possible that I wouldn't, but in my case, I have pretty good odds here against a lot of these units. I think that was 95% odds there. Now, it should be noted that performing actions costs you stamina. This swordsman's down to 17 out of 21 stamina. They regenerate stamina every turn, but actions, attacking, and defending actually cause your unit to use stamina. If they run out of stamina, they start taking damage from attacks, and they also can't attack next turn because they don't have enough stamina to expend. So that's why it's important. There are a lot of these little details about your units that a lot of times are just not present in a lot of games nowadays, I think. But you have to monitor those to make sure that your units are capable of actually doing what you need done with them. So in our case, I think we've used all the units that we can. Yeah, we've already had them all attack. He can't attack again? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, he's already moved for his turn. I was looking at the number for the one above him and it was green. There are numbers next to them which indicate how many moves those units have left. And by the way, the color of that number corresponds to like the color code that I pointed out here before. So in other words, Roderick has a 2 under him. The 2 is red, and that means that he can move still this turn, but he can't actually perform any actions. Let's just end this turn, as I don't see us being able to do much of anything else. So you will find a lot of the game is like this. The battles themselves, I have found, can take up to 45 minutes to complete. They're not small affairs at all, and multiple times I've needed to restart. So something you need to keep in mind as well. If you simply play it badly, you're going to have to go ahead and reload the mission and start from the beginning again, because there is no saving during the mission. And this can be something of a bit of a surprise, I think, because one of the games that this one reminds me of is the Battle for Wesnoth, and that was a sort of a RPG turn-based tactic strategy game in which one of the best ways to actually win it was to continually reload battles until you got good odds. So that's something you simply can't do here, and that means that when you just get unlucky, it might not be a bad action, it just might be bad luck. You're going to have to reload the game. Let's go ahead and deploy our poison here. There are 3 units surrounding it, so I think that was a good shot, a good use of a poison. Unfortunately, I overlooked the fact that one of the goblins could get up here on top of the wall, but let's see what else we can shoot at. If a unit has a skull, that means if you do hit them, it will actually kill them. It's sort of an indicator right there. Not a very good chance. So let's go ahead here. Oh, we actually hit him. I kind of expected to miss. And then in terms of this little flag, you can see this guy has a flag above him. That is his morale. If he has a white flag, that's low morale. If he has a blue flag, that's high morale. If he has no flag, that's, well, it's okay morale. So as you can see, these units here have some pretty high morale. Apparently we've been doing a pretty good job of fighting off the enemy. And there was my first miss of this game. And as you can see, your units will get worn down over time, as will the enemy units from attacking. And misses will become less common because they won't have as much stamina to defend with. So that is largely what the assault is like. Now, as you can see over here, the troll has actually broken down the door, which means that unfortunately our peasant has a couple more turns yet to go before we could actually build another barricade. So maybe I would like to rethink this in the future, how I could do it. Over here you can see the catapults already being challenged by another orc. And really the biggest problem overall, I'd say, is that I'm simply running out of time for this episode. So I think this gives you a fair idea of what the combat is like. Another point worth mentioning is that everything, like even about the interface, the artwork, the interface, where the user interface is actually positioned on the screen, it all, it makes it look very, very retro, I guess you could say. And I think that's something that's important to imbue the player with. I think it's important to point that out to them because that's the kind of expectations you should have going into it. So we'll just go back to the world map here, and I guess I'll give my final closing thoughts on it. I've been playing the game for about 7 hours now, and overall I would say if you're interested in story-driven turn-based strategy games that have a level of difficulty that cannot easily be adjusted simply by adjusting the difficulty slider. If you're interested in having campaigns with meaningful progression where good decisions or bad decisions made in the past will have a profound effect on your success or failure in the future, then this is a game that's certainly worth a look. Given the high levels of RNG involved in the game, it might not be for all, and I would say it's probably my biggest issue with the game because it allows for a lot of unnecessary, in my view, reasons to reload the game when it is through no real fault of your own. And as somebody who likes strategy for, well, being capable of actually beating the game or doing well in the game because you make very good decisions, and then having those decisions sort of invalidated just through bad luck is something that I always have struggled with. So if that's not something that you can deal with easily either, then the game might not really be for you. But other than that, I think it's a pretty interesting entry given when it came out, because this looks like something that we would see maybe 10 years ago. And I'm not saying 10, maybe 15 years ago. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. And I think as long as there is a market for it and people are interested in playing through these kinds of experiences, it's worthwhile. So that was War Banners. You will find a link to the game on Steam if you're interested in checking it out in the description below this video. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.